Wrecker, what's going on?
Hey, Nick, you're a little bit grumpy today. You
No, I'm not
you appear
grumpy.
grumpy,
I'm not grumpy.
but too
I
early for
I'm
you.
as a matter of fact, I'm incredibly happy. Okay. So there are a couple of reasons I'm happy. The first is, do you want to know how powerful we are? Do you appreciate how powerful we are
I
as two
didn't know we
people
were powerful to begin
in
with.
the IS field? So here's why we're so powerful. You and I a year ago chose our favorite papers, right? We have our Trailblazer paper, our Innovator paper.
Of course.
One of those was this really cool paper on bots,
I think I called it the first authoritative, really good study on bots, and it was.
where they were actually theorizing bots doing it right.
Exactly.
So that was it. And bots are everywhere. Bots are so important. And it was Carolina Salge and Elena Caruana and
Hmm.
Jason Thatcher. And I don't know. So then this paper wins best paper for
Yes,
MISQ, right?
it
So
did
basically,
indeed.
MISQ looks to us for who it should pick to win best paper, I think is
Absolutely.
what happened, right? So we're very powerful, you and I. And so that's the first thing I'm happy about. The second thing I'm happy about is that one of the authors there, of course, was Carolina, who happens to be one of my absolute favorite people in the whole world. So we just brought Carolina to join us today. Hi, Carolina.
Hi, Nick. Hi, Jan. Thanks for
Hey,
having me.
Carolina. Nice to see you here. We've met a couple of years ago, and the first thing I learned about you, you're like a tennis superstar, isn't that true?
Oh,
You are a professional tennis player or something?
I'm not sure about the superstar title, but I did play a lot of tennis.
Well, what do you mean you played a lot of tennis? She was not didn't play a lot of tennis. She was a professional tennis player, okay, and she was a D1 tennis player. She played tennis for Clemson, and
What's
she's just
D1? Division one?
Division One.
Oh,
It's the
okay. Yeah.
top tier in
Yeah.
U.S. Universities. So she got it, and here's what she did. I should let her talk about herself, but I'm going to talk about her at first. She this little girl in Brazil, just hanging out in the beaches of Brazil, doing whatever they do, playing volleyball. Uh, and she gets a scholarship to another country to play tennis, in
Wow.
South Carolina. So she's just like, okay, I'll go. So she shows up. It's kind of cool. And played professional tennis, and then decided to be an IS professor.
Yeah, and completed a doctorate and has an award-winning paper from your PhD, right? The bots paper, is that one of your from your dissertation work?
Yes, that was the second chapter of my dissertation,
That's
which, by
very
the way,
impressive.
Nick was on my committee. I don't know if
Ah.
anyone knows this, but yeah, he somehow contributed, right, Nick?
Yeah, I don't know if I contributed anything, but tell the story. Say, all right, this is really cool. And you were doing it in what, 2016? You started with bots, maybe something somewhere around there?
2013. It was the first year.
2013?
Wow.
Oh,
Hmm.
geez. So what
Yeah.
happened? Tell us how you decided to study bots. Give us the backstory, the inside scoop.
Oh gosh, it was total accident. Elena told me to take the social networks class in sociology, and I was like, sure, fine. So I'm taking this class, and like a month in, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I really don't like this class. This is awful. And then, with every PhD course, you have to write a paper. And
Yeah.
so obviously I had no good idea. So at the time I was following this political protest in Brazil, which was the Mensalão scandal.
Yeah.
Surprise. And then I was like, well, I can just go on social media, collect data about this protest and identify who are the key actors, write this paper, be done, right?
Mhm.
So I do that. And then I started looking at the data and I'm like, ooh, this is weird. Um, this doesn't really look human. And
You
then I
noticed
go
the key
to
actor wasn't actually a person, right? Is that what
right.
you
I
noticed?
I I didn't know at the time. I just thought it looked weird. And then I started reading about it, and I went to Ellen. I was like, "Am I crazy, or is this kind of weird too?" She's like, that does look weird. Just keep digging." So I did, and then I found connections between the two weird accounts with two other accounts that look human. So I was looking up these people online, and I found their blog, and I found an email address. And here's where it gets weirder. So I write them in Portuguese because their content was in Portuguese. It's like, hey, I'm this PhD student, I'm studying this. I saw you have connections with these two other users. Do you happen to know them? No response.
Yeah.
So I wait a day and then I send another email in English, same question. And in 10 minutes, I get a response in Portuguese saying, oh, hey, yeah, I know them. They're bots. They're created to do this. And this is what they do. And I'm like, what? So I went to Elena and I was like, wow, I think these are bots. And then I start looking at bots, and there's a ton of work in computer science, but not in IS.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's where my dissertation was born.
Well, and
That's
what I
awesome.
remember when you showed up with this, and then you ended up writing that Academy of Management Discoveries, but you got to realize, Wrecker, at this time, there were all kinds of people in sociology and like they were talking about things like social movements, and they were looking at Twitter and some of these and saying those are people. And they were doing all these studies of social networks and saying these people are doing this and with the assumption that they were indeed people, right?
Exactly. Like I'm thinking of Emma Vast and Hani Safadi. They had this paper on collective action on using Twitter and the BPO oil spill. Remember that?
Yeah.
And the entire like they don't even say this out loud, but of course they're assuming that every single actor and the tweets that they look at, that they're all human created, right? That it's people that self-organize themselves via Twitter and start collective action. I remember that time, right? Social media came up, and this collective action movement, the collective organizing through social media was a big thing. In the same sense that everyone thought that social media was great and a wonderful and a powerful technology at the time, right? It was really like a technology hype time in a way,
right? And then I presented. So then my sociology class became the best class I've ever taken, right? I started loving it. And Dawn, my professor, she's wonderful. I went up to her and she's like, oh, you should send this paper to our conference. But then what I ended up doing is presenting at our workshop, which Jan, you present in a few weeks, same for Nick. And then
Georgia,
I got awesome feedback. And then there was this opportunity. Nick, I don't know if you remember this, but Detmar Straub was retiring, and they had an event for him, at Georgia State. And there was a slot for PhD students to present. And so Elena was like, hey, do you want to present this? It's just a 10-minute presentation to get feedback. And I was like, sure. So then presented there, and then Sunan, she was one of the editors at AMD. She saw me present, and she's like, hey, you need to send this to AMD. Let's work on this.
That is fantastic. Sorry, little tangent, but isn't it great? Like I don't think it's the rule, but it's certainly a wonderful exception that every now and then I hear stories about an editor from a journal goes around, here's a presentation, then actively encourages, it's like, send me your paper. This is great. I want to publish it. I want to do that more of that. I know that Circa is doing this. You told this story. I think this is wonderful editorial practice to shop for papers, right? Like it's like what journalists would do. That should be more of a norm than it is.
That's the job of an editor.
I think so too.
An editor is there to publish papers, not to kill papers. Now, you're also there to make sure that the papers you publish are high quality. But, that's why it's a good thing to go out there and do this, right? Now, Academy of Management Discoveries is an interesting journal. You know who started Academy of Management Discoveries?
Andy Vanderven. Because I have a paper in the second volume, like very early on, we wrote a paper with Brian on a discovery, right? It's really cool because they don't know, they have none of this theory bullshit. They want to have really interesting discoveries. And we put discovery even in the title to make sure that it fits the journal.
Don't say theory bullshit. It could be a theoretical contribution that you discovered, but I think what Andy was going for is inductive, abductive kind of research where you don't necessarily need to have hypotheses, have a problematization, have a front end. He was looking for, let's go explore the world and say something. And I think you need theoretical, or you don't need an AMD, but theoretical contributions are fine, right? It's just they are fine,
but they're in the back end of a paper, not the front end, right? That's the interesting, right? So you have an empirical discovery, and then of course, like you work with patterns, right? The idea would be, does it have theoretical implications, right? It's still important. So theories bullshit is a little bit of a strong word, I guess, but it's a very refreshing journal. It was very well handled, and I'm sort of To be honest, guys, I'm expecting this to really climb up all the main rankings. To be honest, because just as well run as all of the other AMD AOM journals. It's got really good papers in there. It's got really good editors. It's got very great processes. I'm pretty sure that over time it'll end up in the, all these ranking lists.
Yeah.
Yeah, my experience was wonderful.
Yeah,
And
mine too.
the paper got so much better through the review process. What was cool is that they really pushed us on the theoretical implications, or like the so what. So you discovered this, who cares?
Yeah.
And what does that mean for previous work? So we have, a big section on that paper talking about that. And it goes back to what both of you were saying, people were assuming these users were humans,
Yeah.
when in fact they weren't. So yeah, it was a great experience.
And you actually were flowing all around the country, I remember, at first with your bot stuff, right? You were a PhD student. You got a lot of, people were interested in this, right? And organizational and IS world known was doing bots. Did you get any new ideas? Like so clearly someone wanted to publish one of your papers, which is nice. But did you get new ideas when you were being flown around for research that you subsequently did, or not really?
Yes. I got two. So yeah, the timing couldn't be perfect. I got really lucky, to be honest. I think there are two things that came up during my presentations as I was traveling around. One was a comment. I don't think I ever told him, but it was a comment by Balaji from South Florida. When I presented there, he said, Carolina, I know you're studying in the context of social movements, etc., but this is really important for national security. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Right. So, and, recently I've heard some politicians talk about bots in the media. And the one thing that they mentioned is national security. So, and this was back in 2017. So that was one. And then the other one.
Did you do work in national security since or something, or are you thinking about it?
No, I'm thinking about it. I haven't. I have followed more the second line, which came up in the presentation as well, or some of my presentations, which is more related to information curation. So one of the questions that I got was like, oh yeah, I mean, this is really cool, what a nice discovery. And now you're studying how this actually works. But where's this information coming from? Does it really matter where they get information?
The bots,
how do they,
you mean?
Right. Yeah, the bots. Does it matter if the search, includes, I don't know, a hashtag, or if not? Does it matter if they change their search mechanism? So that's the line I have pursued a little bit more, because I think it's more tightly connected to the MISQ paper.
Wouldn't it also be like, what if we give the bot a little bit more power? If we connect the bot to, like LLMs of this day, a generative bot, so to speak, not just a bot who retweets, has some sort of algorithm behind and that tells them how to diffuse certain information with certain hashtags or whatever, however they work. But what if the bot can spawn out content all by itself instead of reproducing and distributing content?
Right. This is the trend.
Yeah, that is the trend, right?
This is the trend right now. And this is funny. You're saying this because I presented last summer at ESSEC, and Youngjin was there. I was like, Youngjin, what are you doing here?
He was there for like 3 months or something. Yeah.
Right. And he asked me this question. It was a really good question. I've been thinking about this ever since. And he's like, Carolina, what is different about bots? Aren't they just like any algorithm? So, can I just call it algorithm? Why do I have to call it bots? And going back to the LLM point that you made, I think a lot of people are focusing on the technology. Are we going from this really simple to more sophisticated bots that can do all of this, but not so much in the environment that they navigate? And I think that's what's different here. If you take social media, that's very different than any other environments where algorithms work.
Yeah.
And so I've been reading Simon, which is my favorite book, The Science of the Artificial, that we read
That's
for your
right,
class.
sister. Yep.
And this whole idea of inner and outer environment. And funny thing, I've actually been meeting with Amrit Tiwana, who's a faculty here at Georgia. So we meet every Friday. We've been doing this for a few months to talk about Simon. So
Oh, wow.
trying to get some of these ideas. So short answer is sure, LLMs matter. Will it have will bots change because of this technology? Sure. But what about the environment? I think somehow that's quite interesting, or even more interesting to me.
So two things, Carolina. First is when I come to visit Georgia in a few weeks, you and Amrit and I are going to sit down and I want to talk because I love that book and I've read it 30 times and I feel like I know it very well. So we're going to sit down. You guys will update me on what you're doing. And the second thing is, bots are algorithms, duh. But if you go to social media, how many algorithms are there? There's the thing that's feeding you your news. There are so many algorithms. So a bot is a particular class of algorithm that does things, and we could define it, but it does things like humans in certain environments. And, arguably a bot can let the world know it's a bot, like in Reddit, or it can be pretending it's a human. But there's a particular class of algorithms in these social contexts that are bots, right? So there's no reason that you can't have theorizing, particularly for bots, and then have theorizing for algorithms, and the theories for bots will inherit the theories of algorithms and perhaps add a little, right? So I think it is an algorithm, right?
For sure. Yeah, it is.
Unless it's a cyborg, which is another part of your dissertation that you discovered, right? Which is in these social media accounts, right? I don't know. So what's a cyborg?
If you talk social media, it's an account that is human and bot assisted. So it could be, I don't know, 80% automated, 20% human, or vice versa. Different degrees, but mixed.
Are these still
hybrid.
out there? Are they still out there? Like people are using?
Hey, this reminds me of again, another tangent. Like I sometimes watch, Twitch stream gamers and streaming, and there are these people that do all sorts of world record, right? How fast can you finish a particular game? And there's two classes of them. One of them is this sort of like I manually play Super Mario, whatever, and see whether I can beat the world record time. And then there are cyborgs, which are players that use technology assistance systems, tasks, right? And they're much better, which is kind of like exactly the same thing. There are tasks that take over much of the control over your little action figure, or a little bit of control, and it's a completely different ball game. Like playing a game manually versus playing it as a cyborg with the task system behind it, next to you, helping you, is like is like doping in sports. It changes the rules of competition. That's why they keep them actually separate. Like there's two different sort of world record competitions going on, one human and the other one computer assisted with tasks. And again, no one's studying that in IS. It's very interesting, this entire Twitch environment, and no one paper that it actually even looks at this. And this is a classical adoption intention kind of paper. So it's a boring paper. But in general, this is such a huge environment. Yeah.
Are you doing this? Are you studying Twitch?
No,
or are you just watching it like my 16-year-old son?
Exactly. That's what I'm doing.
Well, that's chess. So in chess, they have the same thing, record where the bot will beat any human, but like a master human with the bot will beat the bot, right? So
that's right. Hey, Carolina, I have a question because it never happened to me, right? So you just won this, MISQ Best Paper of the Year award, right? Which also means, by the way, you're in the running for the 10-year Impact Award. In 10 years from now,
in 10 years from now,
right.
We all have to cite her paper.
we'll all cite your paper like crazy to make sure you'll get it, of course.
Thank you.
So I want to know, because that never happened to me, and it probably never will either. But has your life changed since you got that award? Do you get like I imagine you get actually calls like, can you come and present on your paper or stuff like this? Has anything changed since that news got out?
I guess a little bit, yeah. So I've started getting some messages on LinkedIn.
You're famous now, even more famous.
Like requests and messages for with invitations to present. I've also gotten really nice emails from people, very kind words about our work. So But other than that, I don't know. If anything, like the most significant change is the pressure that I feel now. You know,
What do you mean? Like,
I
you feel more pressure or less pressure now? Like, you're
more
award-winning
pressure,
scientist now. More
more
pressure.
pressure. I feel like I need to keep this up.
Yeah,
Seriously. Wow.
I don't even, first of all, I'm not sure I believe you because I think you are just a badass with like ice in your veins and you don't feel pressure. Secondly, if you actually do feel pressure, I have a feeling you're just going to perform better with the pressure
Well,
than you would
she's
have
a
before.
professional tennis player. Of course,
That's
she
what I
knows
mean.
how to perform under pressure. And of course,
All
she
right,
has ice in
here's
her
the
vein.
thing. Here's the thing. I remember, so Nikhil Srinivasan, he and I got our PhDs together. He's on the faculty there at Georgia. And he was a ping pong player in India, and he's actually quite good. And it was kind of funny to see Carolina go into mode because they were going to play ping pong against each other. But go into the mode of now I'm going to compete. You know, she laughs, hangs out. She's totally chill. You know, it's like, you could totally see Carolina partying in Brazil, right? On like festival or whatever they do down there. And then all of a sudden you put the ping pong paddle in her hand and you're like, okay, now you're going to compete. She had this like mean look on her face. She was going at it. She just, now she didn't kill Nikhil. You guys were closer than anyone thought you would be, right? So that's Nikhil's actually a pretty
Yeah,
good player.
yeah, but I was not really playing serious.
Well, you looked to me like you were playing. So you crushed everybody. No one could even stand on a ping pong table with you.
So funny thing you mentioned this because I thought I was kind of good at ping pong because of tennis. And then when I was at Wake Forest, we had a tournament, a ping pong tournament. And one of my students was a professional ping pong player in China.
Yeah.
And I played her in the semis. And she's like the nicest kid you can think of. Like, you know, sweet, soft-spoken. And as we were warming up, she was cool. The moment that they say play, oh my, that girl just like changed her demeanor. I was really happy that I was able to get like 3 points out of 11 from her. So now she humbled me. Let's put it this way.
But Carolina, tell me this, like, I've long held this, like, you know, quite little theory. Like, I do think engaging in some level of competitive sports on a reasonably, you know, that really that helps our job, does it not? Do you feel that way? That, you know, because these are both pressure systems. Whether people like it or not, there's a degree of competitiveness and competition in all of this. And there's these things like when you step on the court and you need to perform. I mean, when you step into a presentation and, you know, every now and then I think like, well, time to perform, right? Time to do a good job. And I do think that you have a little bit of background or had that exposure that you would get in sports at some level.
So Carolina, you know why Recker's going on this? Because he's about to tell us this, because usually when you meet Recker, within the first minute, you hear that he played against Dirk Nowitzki back in the day. Right?
And he humbled me.
Nice.
Yeah. And he humbled me.
Well, I think he would humble most people, right?
So you were what, a semi-pro basketball player, or what was your?
I didn't want to make it about this, but yeah, but no, yes. Yeah, so like never got a Division I scholarship. Let's put it this way, right? I tried, but I didn't.
But you were a top tier non-professional German, or you were professional, like you actually got paid to play basketball?
I got paid. That's how I financed my studies. Yeah.
So you were a professional. So I'm talking to a professional basketball player and a professional tennis player. You know what I was professional at in sports?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Nothing.
What about you, Nick?
Nothing ever.
So Carolina, the you know, you're assistant prof, right? So does it mean like you're going up for tenure, or you got it? Like, what's the status there?
No, I'm not going for tenure this year. I need more publications before I go for tenure.
Does your JAIS count at Georgia? Because JAIS and JMIS are kind of like they're A's, but not MISQ and ISR, right?
Right. Yeah. So it counts, but
not as much, kind of thing.
Everyone just keeps telling you one more. You know, Carolina, like seriously, last last couple of weeks, I had several people tell me, you need a few more. You need a few more. I've heard this like a couple of times. A few more what? For what? Anyway, so this
Yeah.
never stops. So people out there, like you think this is stops when you get tenure. No, like at some level,
No.
people will still come up and you say like, yeah, your news is really nice, but you need a few more. Like it doesn't matter
Right.
what stage that is. This process is never ending. It's
It's
ridiculous.
never ending,
Yeah.
right?
But here's the serious question that I wanted to ask you, right? So when I talk to to people at postdoctorate, right, they move into assistant prof or postdoc positions, whatever. I always think, and it certainly was for me, I think the huge challenge is that you're moving from this project level where you have a dissertation project, or your dissertation paper, your job market paper, and then maybe another one or whatever. But you're moving a level up. You're building a research program, or you have a portfolio of project, right? You're moving from one to, let's say, 5 or 6, right? So many assistant professors say like, I need 4 to 5, 6 papers in 5 years. And then the question becomes not how do I make this the best project ever, but how do I handle 5 of them? God damn it! In what order?
Right.
What sequence? With whom? Right? Do you feel the same way?
Yes. And, then there are some projects that you get into, and sometimes you're like, oh, this is not even my idea. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I like the people, but I'm not sure like I should be doing this. Maybe I said yes to too many projects and I'm leading too
Probably.
many projects. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. And the way that I've tried to stay focused, I guess, if you wish, a couple years ago, I think I talked to Elena, and we're like, why don't we start this research program on bots at UGA? And we have a bunch of colleagues that are interested, that have different skills. We can partner up and
Wow.
do several papers. So that's kind of what we've been doing since. So it's been nice.
That's
so we
very
have
cool.
papers in the pipeline, and all the other projects that I started, like I don't want to just do nothing with them. So I'm, trying to do
We
this
all run into that.
program, and
Yeah.
it's.
I have 2 views on this. Like the one, like I hear this all the time. Like, oh, I don't know how much effort I should put into these other things, especially when I'm not first author. And my take on this, like, jump in, right? But my take is like, do them. You'll be better off doing more than being, more focused and
No.
only doing your own thing. Right. So I
don't
think
know.
we have different views on this, but I always think like usually I find this is correlation, not causation, but usually I find the people that do that more and get a little bit more involved and more exposed and do just more are better off than those that say, no, I got my 2 things. I'm doing my 2 things. I'm saying no to everything else. I think people are missing out on a lot of learning opportunities, even though, of course, I realize this means I'm saying you should say yes to more things because in the long run, it'll help you.
All right. So I disagree entirely with that blanket advice. Now, I think for some people, it works, right? For some people, it doesn't. And I think it depends on you and your dispositions and your work ethic and your ability to conceptualize and a whole bunch of things. But it also depends on what it is you're studying, right? So if you're doing, say, experiments, behavioral experiments, and you're very good at behavioral experiments, and then someone brings you in and it's not quite in your area, that you're doing them on bots and morality or something, and then the other person does them on some other topic, but then yes, you lean in because it's but you got to be careful with your advice, because the bottom line is we get reputations. I've been invited to places early in my career. I had 2 A-hits, right? An MIS quarterly and ISR. The ISR paper, the institutional stuff, seemed to resonate with social theoretic people in our field. The other paper, the MISQ one, which was kind of sense making, for whatever reason, I think a couple of people have cited it, but it didn't resonate with the world, right?
Yeah.
So they were both A-hits in the sense. They were kind of different. I was invited places. I was invited, Circa had this thing at UT Austin. I'm an assistant professor, and I was invited to talk to her doctoral students for a couple of years in a row about institutional theory. It's like you hit something that you are kind of an expert in, or better than others. For me, it was institutional theory. For Carolina, it's bots. You start getting invited for that. People start knowing you for that. The moment you have an expertise in something, I think you need to go with it. And especially as an early career researcher, I'm not saying say no to everything, but limit other stuff and go with the thing you know, because you get opportunities when you know something. You get invited. There's absolutely no reason. Carolina just said she was invited to what, FSU, or not FSU, Central Southern Florida, where
South,
biology used to be.
well,
South Florida.
South Florida.
Yeah, USF. So South Florida, where biology is, you were invited to MIT. You were a PhD student. The only reason a PhD student gets invited for talks if they're not on the job market is for knowing something, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, this disclaimer, my USF was a job talk.
oh, was it? All right.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, but now you're not getting invited. Well, maybe you are because people want to hire you, but
Yeah, I've
you know,
been, I went to
yeah.
Maryland
So
recently.
So Carolina, like seriously, right? So here, two different pieces of advice, and I feel like that's what Nick and I do quite a lot, right? So we talk our mouth about what young, assistant profs in these situations should be doing, I guess, drawing on our experience or whatever else. But of course, the game has changed, right? Like it's when I was, it was very very different, and same for Nick, I guess. So when you hear these two very opposing views, like what do you make of that? I mean, like what's really
Well,
going on in the life of an assistant professor these days?
She likes me, not you. So she's going to say Nick's right. Recker's full of shit. He's in Germany. Germans don't know a lot about how academia actually
well,
works.
well,
Of course.
I was I was hearing you both talk and just relating back to my own experience, and I think both of you have good points. One of the struggles that I have, and I've tried to manage my time a little bit better, is that any project that I'm involved in, and I think this comes from my tennis background, it's like doesn't matter if I'm first, second, or
Yeah.
third author. I'm like going to give 100%.
I love
And
that, Carolina.
so I always ended up spending more time on things that I actually committed to
I
be.
love that. And I think if we all did this and everyone did this, then this
Yeah.
would be a better place. Very simply, right? You should
Mhm,
always
mhm.
do more than what is expected of
Yeah.
you and never do less. And I see too many
think we
people
can
that
all
are
agree
too
to that.
strategic, right? So it's wonderful. Don't
Right,
ever give
right.
that up.
Yeah,
We can all agree to that.
even
If you agree to do something, you
Then
do
do
it.
it.
And you
Yeah.
don't
Right.
worry about your author order. Yeah.
If you do
exactly.
it well and do it right. And if you don't, then
Correct.
don't do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And even if I wanted to be more strategic, I feel like I can't. This is just who I am, and I just have to accept it. I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah,
Having
you
said
built up
that,
your algorithms and bots, and then you do some
Mhm.
meta-analyses here on the side, right? So that's kind of your
Right.
profile, right?
Yeah, so like having said that, I'm somebody who's going to spend significant amount of time on my projects, meaning that if I take on too many projects, I will likely be stressed out,
Yeah.
feel like, I'm not focused, this and that. So I do have to be a little bit more conscious about what do I say yes and no to. But to your point, Jan, like the meta-analysis, right? That I did with Nick, the JMIS, that was awesome. That was a topic I didn't know much about, escalation of commitment, but now I feel like I can at least converse about it. I've learned. I read a bunch of papers. I was able to apply a methodology I'd learned about. So did I learn from it? Absolutely, and got an awesome publication. So I think both of you have a point. It's more like just know who you are and try to balance it out. Like you're never going to get it right the first time. Just learn from
No,
it.
and you got to give yourself some time and surround yourself with great networks. One piece of advice that was given to me, like literally like a year out from finishing my dissertation, basically my mentor came up and said, like, look, Ian, first of all, you need to have a second leg on which to stand. Like you're known for this one thing. For me was process something rather. And build a second
He was known
leg.
for TAM with processes, basically.
Process tab. I was the empirical
Process
guy.
TAM.
I was an empirical guy doing process management. That was known for. Yeah, exactly. And people laughed about it because I was asking people how they felt about process models, which is true. And the other thing that someone said to me is like, you'll never have as much time to learn a new methodology. And I felt, of course, overwhelmed. I had to scale up, right? I had to move from project to program, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of time. And they came up and said, trust me, if you want to learn something new, do it now. So what I did is I moved from this survey level stuff, for example, to experiment and actually to qualitative research. I didn't really do that in my PhD. So afterwards, I literally expanded my method knowledge and I enjoyed that. And it sounds like you're doing a little bit of the same. That you said like, hey, here's an opportunity to jump into meta-analysis. I like that too, right? So sort of like try out new things because believe it or not, you won't have more time later on. Probably not. You have other responsibilities and, life intervenes and whatever else happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was so lucky to be able to do my PhD at Georgia because I've got some of the best mentorship I could ever have. And one of the advice that I got was take as many methods courses as you can while you're a PhD student.
Yeah.
Because you're right. After you become an assistant professor, you don't have as much time. But I also like have this, I love learning new things. It's just like, why not? That's cool. And so I'm always looking up and reading papers on methods. And I didn't know about qualitative meta-analysis. Nick was the one that introduced it to me. He's like,
well,
hey,
let me set this straight. There is no qualitative meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is a form of statistics. Like qualitative people want to call it because people associate something with it with bullshit. It's just a literature review.
Of course, this is Wrecker not reading anything, just spouting at the mouth. All right. If you would know, Carolina she knows more about meta-analysis in her little finger than you will know in your entire career. Okay. She did meta-analyses before she ever set foot on UGA.
Yeah, I actually took a meta-analysis course in kinesiology, and that was mostly quantitative. And then when Nick came to me and said, oh, there's qualitative meta-analysis, and I'm like, what? Show that to me. So he's like, hey, read these papers, read this. So
but we actually did a quantitative one first on Agile and pair programming, right? That was during your PhD. So we did quantitative, we did qualitative, but she knows quantitative. But here's the thing about learning a new method. And Carolina, let me just tell you a story about myself. Taufik was my postdoc up here at Notre Dame. I know you know Taufik Alashore, and he taught me how to do a kind of online experiments. So I thought, this is really cool. I love this. So I started doing it with our PhD students, all this. Then Wrecker makes me listen to a podcast from Freakonomics recently, where basically my takeaway from these two podcasts of Freakonomics is that behavioral research, like with online experiments, is just a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, here I am. I finally learned a new method and the whole method is bullshit. So I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? So I don't know.
I don't think the method is bullshit. I mean, we talked about this in the last episode. I don't think the method is bullshit, but I do think it is more susceptible to certain practices that later being thought out to be, that's what you don't want to do.
Well, not just cheating, but maybe capitalizing on spurious.
Exactly. That's exactly right what it is. It is a little bit too susceptible to actually do. I've done experiments too. And yes, you do p-hack. And yes, so some level you do
p-hack. I don't. I have hypotheses.
Send me those podcasts. I want to listen to them. But
no,
yes, I have
by the time this one comes out, Carolina, this one will follow up the one we talk about the Freakonomics podcast. But I'll send them to you anyway, right? So Freakonomics radio podcast on the Francesca Gino and Dan Ariely case, and what we can learn from it.
Yeah, and of course I know Taufik. He's my brother.
He's your brother.
Such a nice guy. Yeah.
You mafia guys, you're weird little Nick Parenta mafia. You have all these weird words. You call everyone sister and brother, and like it's very weird. Like only a real family or the mafia does that.
Carolina's probably too young to be like a real sister, but I call her sister. She's more like I'm more like an uncle, I think, and she would be like my name. But that's not cool. You can't be like, hey, niece. So I think we go with sister. Yeah.
I think you are actually my uncle's age.
Yeah,
no joke.
I'm your dad's age, aren't I? Am I your dad's age? How old's your dad?
My dad is 67.
All right, Carolina's dad is total badass. He's like, what is he, a surgeon or something in Brazil?
Yes.
He
is. So is my mom.
He's like next level.
Wow. That's very high profile.
Yeah, Carolina has the big badass family, and then so she has to be a badass too. It's like it runs,
So Carolina, before Nick came on the show here, we were talking a little bit about Nick as a co-author. Can we talk about this on air?
Oh God!
So you work with. Now the serious question is, of course, like you work with multiple different people, right? On this one paper, you have Jason, I think, and Elena. You wrote a paper with Nick. So let me phrase that a little bit more general. Like for you, what's the perfect co-author? Like, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to write a paper with you? What are you looking for?
Oh, no offense to you, Nick, but I think the best co-author I've ever worked with is probably Elena.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll
and
take that. Yeah.
I've also worked with Mareike
Müllmann.
on the paper, and
Yeah.
she is wonderful. I really enjoyed our collaboration. So, what does the perfect co-author looks like to me? Oh,
What do they do? What do Mareike and Elena, what do they do to you come out and say, like, these are perfect co-authors? Are they writing a lot? Are they just clever? Are they, what are they doing?
yeah, of course. I mean, the writing for sure. But I think what makes the collaboration good is I'm a very direct person. And they're both direct. So I like to work with direct people.
Yeah,
And
makes it easier.
they're also very critical, and I also like working with critical people. You asked earlier about having a sports background, whether that's useful for a career. I would say 100% because you develop thick skin through sports. I mean, you lose a lot. And so I do want people to trash my paper or our paper before it was submitted because, reviewers are going to trash it anyway.
Yeah.
So,
But think of what you just said. First, you said they contribute, right?
Mhm.
Actually writing words on paper.
right.
And then you said they, are critical and disciplined perhaps in their thinking. But
Right.
if someone just shows up for a collaboration and they're critical, you probably would resent that. No, it's like, well, when are you going to write or do something, right? Don't just criticize what I'm doing.
I don't know. And maybe that's just me. I like people that are critical. I usually don't take it personal. Unless, I mean, you can tell the difference, right? When somebody is just like attacking for the sake of criticizing. Um, but I like critical because in my mind, I'm like, oh, did I miss something? Like, it's just like my brain is always like, what did I miss? Like, this is not good enough. I need somebody to point it out. Something is
I'll
off.
tell you what drives me nuts. When I have a co-author that puts a comment in saying what we should do rather than attempting to do it, right? It's like attempt to do it and do it badly and then let's iterate. Don't put a comment in saying what we should do. That drives me nuts. So with the critical thing, yeah.
With the critical thing, a little bit like what you said, Nick, as well. Like it doesn't like, okay, fine, tell me where I'm wrong. Okay, fine, but give me something better. Like at least give me something different, right? If you just say this is not working, well, that's not very helpful, is it? Right? Tell me when it's not working. Here's an alternative. Or of course, I agree. Don't tell me what we should be doing. Do it.
Do it badly.
Yeah.
I'll iterate, then you iterate, and then 4 times of going through it, it'll be starting to get decent, right?
I guess I've been lucky then with co-authors. I usually don't have co-authors that do this, that just write a comment.
Well, that comes with time. If you expand your network a little bit, and with time, you will have shitty co-authors. I think there's no other way around it. I was having a conversation the other day about co-authorship and ethical issues. We've all been there. It's sort of like who warrants to be a co-author, etc. And I said, look, you will end up in situations where you will work with co-authors who don't contribute as much. And they probably shouldn't be in there. I don't know how to avoid these situations. And my only takeaway is just make sure you're never that guy. Like make sure that you always, what you said earlier, Carolina, make sure you always do more than what is expected or maybe even required. Just never be that guy who other people badmouth because they don't pull their weight. Like I think that's the only thing we can do.
And I'll tell you this, to talk about Carolina as a co-author, that's it. Right. So she's never going to be short for people wanting to co-author with her. And that's why you're getting so many folks wanting to write with you. The ones who have written with you are happy to work with you in the future because you're such a pleasure to work with. Right. But I think then new people realize this. So you're going to get more and more opportunities.
Especially after this very important podcast here. Like your inbox will be overflowing.
So wait, if someone bugs you, they should show it. I'm going to give you the rules of if you want to collaborate with Carolina. All right. This is what you have to do. I'm her uncle. You want to collaborate with this is what you have to do. You have to show up with a really awesome, huge data set that has all kinds of bots and algorithms, and it's got to be longitudinal, right? You have
Mhm.
to, so that's first. You have to have awesome data. Second, you have to have achieved something in your life, like maybe other papers. And that's is that you have a record of what else
Wow.
do we want from people who want to collaborate with you,
I
Carolina?
think they should have an
They're
idea,
nice
dude.
people.
Yeah, and they
Nice
should be
people.
nice and
Mm-hmm.
disciplined and a pleasure to
Mhm.
work with. I think that counts more than any
Right.
data. So I'll trade your
Mm-hmm.
data for a good idea and a fun and reliable to be working with. I like
All right, for that good idea and $3, you get a cup of Starbucks, right? An idea has never done shit. Data and a lot of work. Those are the things that do it. And yes, pleasant
Mhm.
people are more fun to work with. But I keep working with you, Wrecker, and you're one of the
yeah.
least pleasant people I have in my network.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
is true,
believe
and it's
that.
and we keep trying, and it never works. The collaboration never works. So,
The other
Carolina,
thing,
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
no, the other thing I was going to mention that I just thought about that I really appreciate in some of my co-authors is that when they tell me, okay, I'll look at the paper and I'll give it back to you in 2 weeks. And they actually do
Oh,
it.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
thank
yeah, yeah.
you, thank you. Dependency, right? Yeah, absolutely. That someone is dependable
Dependability.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not dependency, dependability, of course. Absolutely, fully agree.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
drives me nuts. Nick knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. He's talking about me right now.
Yeah, he
Uh,
is.
I deliver. But here's the deal. I do sometimes deliver slower than I say I will. Right. So I am optimistic. But here's the deal. I really do think in my collaborations, I contribute and I contribute. The thing that I bring to the table is typically uh, some, or at least I think I do, intellectual rigor, theoretical rigor, right? That people bring me on their papers because I'm going to make sure that theory is strong and fair and that our contribution is strong. So in order to do that, I have to read. So sometimes I'll say to someone, listen, I will get it to you this weekend. And I have Friday open and I start reading the paper and then I end up going and reading a book or going and reading something we cite. And then I spend that whole Friday. It's not like I'm not working, but I'm honing my skills of reading, which is what I love to do. And it's my favorite part of being an academic. And our job is not just to just knock out papers, it's to make intellectual contributions, right? And in order to make a contribution, you have to read. So I find myself oftentimes getting delayed because I'm reading and then it sets me back. And of course, other times, I get whatever family
Mhm.
I didn't prioritize
Wouldn't it be
properly.
nice if
And
someone built like a Tinder thing and like an app where people can find their co-authors, but on every co-author on my profile page, I would say this is how I work. These are the nice things about it. I'm dependable. I'm fast, but I don't read or whatever. And in your kind, it would say I'm really good at theoretical rigor and I read a lot, but I'm not dependable. I'm very slow. Something like
I'm
this. So that
dependable, just not, you can't set your
okay,
watch by me.
fine.
Oh,
You know
you
what you
you
know what I mean.
are. Yeah, and Nick, I think it's totally fine. Like I've worked on papers where I, thought I was gonna get something done before I actually could. But
Yeah.
as long as they like when that happens to me, at least that I can't get it done by the timeline I set it to myself and to my co-authors, I just send them a note and say, hey, sorry, I thought I could
Yeah.
get this done, but I will need, I don't know, 2 more weeks or something.
That's good advice. Communicate with your co-authors rather
Communication,
than,
yeah.
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 Absolutely.
And I would say you are also very good at framing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
the conceptualization, I like to play with methods. I like to be part of interesting methods and anything innovative I get really excited about. But yeah, the thing I'm good at is probably because I love to read and
Mm-hmm.
I know, and I want to imitate the things that I read that are cool. And I don't want to do the things that frustrate me. Right. Like, so
Right.
for example, and Recker, hopefully you don't mind, Recker did a quick and dirty intro to this paper we're working on. And he did an excellent job with like his framing and his motivation. But in this one sentence, he had something like, I forget your exact words, something like our knowledge about this is insufficient. Right. And da 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 da. And I read that and I'm like, oh, that drives me
It's a
nuts when
gap
I'm
argument.
reading. When I'm reading a paper and I see our knowledge is insufficient, I'm like, insufficient for what? Right. And it drives me crazy when I'm reading or when I'm editing. So here, my co-author put it in the paper and it's an early version and we're just hashing out ideas, right, of this intro. And it just drives me nuts. So like first thing we did on our call today is I brought up to Recker. I'm like, look, insufficient. We can't do that. Right. And
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly. But I think like I know why you said that. And I think, right now I'm running around with this particular project. The reality is, Carolina, we've been working on this first page easily for 5 months. Like literally, we haven't touched any single other part of the paper for 5 months, but the first 2 pages. And I do think now I run around and tell this to doctoral students, like, this is hard work. Sometimes it takes a look at us. We're working on a page and we don't agree on one page out of 40.
Yeah,
right.
But you're making it seem like a page. What it is the appropriate.
It's important.
We've already know our contribution. We already know what we're going to do. We're talking about problematizing the literature. And when you problematize the literature, you have to know the literature. And our previous problematizations, when you dig more, you find that the problematization is not a fair problematization about the literature. So then you have to go read more. You have to strengthen and add nuance to and so it's this back and forth. 4 authors, all of which have our own opinions of the world. We're all senior people on this paper. We're trying to make an important point. And every time one of us throws out a problematization, the other ones don't like it.
Exactly.
And then we keep so when you say 5 months, it's not 5 months of writing a page. It's 5 months of getting 4 people to agree to their contribution. Right.
Exactly.
And
yeah, you're right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it is. It's 4 months of hashing out an agreement and understanding the literature. And then I'm like, you know what? When this paper's done, it's already beautiful. I'm going to be the most proud of this paper that I've been in. And you know what? The nice thing is there are 4 of us. We're all senior. None of us are in a hurry. We'll wait till it's perfect and then we'll submit it. We can submit it in 3 years. I know you would hate that, but I don't care. None of our careers matter on this. Nothing. This is just a matter of making the idea as strong as we possibly can. And it takes a while.
It does.
So I wouldn't be mad at this. But I'm hearing y'all talk, and I think you're talking about not just your contribution, but how you communicate and your tone, right? There's some tones that are triggering to you, Nick, and there's some that are triggering to me too as a reviewer, as I read my own paper. And if anything, sort of what I learned is that not only what you say matters, but how you say really matters. And so having a nice tone that brings people in instead of triggering them is really important. And I'm going to disagree with you in the fact that I don't think there is a perfect paper. If anything, that's sort of what I've learned in my short career. That's the best that you can do. And that's it.
I agree and disagree on there's certainly no perfect paper. And I think sometimes the best thing we can do is we can, literally print it out, look it in front of us and ask ourselves, is this the best we can do? We do this in the revision, right? We take the revision, we take the previous version and we put them side by side, and ask, is this better? Is this the better? And is this the best we can do? If so, let's resubmit. That's all. What else are you going to do? Right. So I agree on this. On the other hand, I think one of the learnings from such a process is also, it's worth fighting about a single sentence, and these things matters. And sometimes I see people that don't care about entire passages of their paper. Like they literally put paragraphs, especially in the introduction. They got this meaningless blurb about the world and how it all changes and competitive environments and blah, and they don't even believe any of this, and it's still in the paper. And I'm like, don't do this. We have to be quite precise and perfectionistic in this sense. The difficult part is, of course, is knowing when to stop.
All right. We have a new records rule, which I would subscribe to entirely. And that's never publish a paper where you don't agree with every single sentence, right? Every single sentence. Look at what just happened to the president of Harvard, right? She's gone. Something was plagiarized. I don't know if it was a single authored piece or not, but not just the plagiarism and that sort of thing. But if I'm reading a paper and I don't like or agree with the sentence, either I take it out and delete it and put a little note in and saying whatever. I'm part of this big collaboration. We have like 40 people in this group and we do some things every once in a while. We just wrote a book. It's getting published by Oxford University Press, right?
Congrats.
Thank you. It's on Consortia. So it's this big group. I've been part of this group for a decade and it's like a fun kind of eclectic group. But when we were done, and I guarantee not every one of the 40 looked at every single sentence, right? But everybody, and I don't think it's 40, it might be 20 something, but there are 40 in the bigger group. Before I let the last copy go to Oxford University Press, I literally read the entire book from beginning to end to make sure that every single sentence I could at least live with, right? Because my name is whatever author number I am on the paper on the book, but it's I'm not going to put my name on a damn thing unless. And there were occasions where people would try to make, because we're talking about big societal issues and everything, and people would try to put in like a little political statement or something that, maybe in their circle is just and I would eliminate it every time and go, nope, and I would just go through the entire book and make sure that it's something I could live with. So I think that's what you do with papers. If your name goes on something,
you got to own it.
Your name. I don't care if you're eighth author. It's your name.
Absolutely.
Correct. What do you guys think of this idea? Because I don't know, at least I've thought about it. Sometimes I write things in papers that get published, and then like 3 years later, I read it and I'm like, oh, I really don't like what I wrote.
That happened to me many times. Yeah.
Many times.
Are you guys okay with this idea of allowing authors to like add notes to their published papers? Something that,
I love it.
Right? Wouldn't that be cool? Like if I would write this again, I would really write this sentence because, I would rewrite it.
Well, not so much sentences, but maybe something substantive in the end. We all have sentences that are bad. Go look at my work. I'm sure you'll find things I don't agree with now. But I think if there's something substantive to say author's subsequent note and have it an ongoing thing. Yeah, I love it. I love that idea.
Me too. Like, first of all, note. Second of all, I look at old papers and I usually dislike it. And I like that I dislike it because it shows me that I've moved on. I don't want to find the situation that I look at something and say like, oh yeah, I fully agree with this. As if the last 10 years never happened. I'm like, my state of knowledge and expertise is exactly the same. No, I want to be able to say like, look, I looked at the world this way and I saw this was whatever. And now I look at the world differently because I'm evolving. Hopefully I'm developing, I'm advancing, hopefully, but definitely changing.
Right.
And so I like it. Like that realization that you talked about. Absolutely. And I do like some papers not to have been published, but I think the consequence of that is what Nick said is like, I want to make sure that everything that has my name on it, at least in that moment, I'm completely and entirely comfortable with, because likely 10 years from now, I won't be anymore. And if I'm not from the start, then he better not be on it in the first place.
Right. The other thing is kind of like, as you go through the review process, reviewers push you here, they don't push you there, things like that. And I think it would be fun. I keep those to myself, but it's like, oh, reviewers could actually have pushed me a little bit more on this. And maybe it would have helped me. Right. They gave me a pass, or, it would have helped me a strong paper if I could write this again. I would have focused more on the section. Maybe I would have said this instead of anyway.
So Carolina used to do reviews for me back in the day, and then I haven't used her in a few years as a reviewer. At MISQ, we recently had her do a review, maybe last year or something. It was awesome. So if you need a reviewer who can,
Jesus Christ. Don't say this publicly.
Oh yes,
it's phenomenal. No, I shouldn't say that publicly.
No, now she gets like a 27 request.
No, but here's the deal. If you're asking Carolina to do a review or me to do a review or whoever to do a review, this is what I would suggest that editors of journals do. Look at your journal. Has Carolina ever published there? If she hasn't, maybe don't ask her to review, right? Look at the topic. Do the people actually cite her work and deal with it substantively and really deal with bots and algorithms or whatever it is she does? Then maybe ask her because of her expertise. But I get these review requests, journals I've not even heard of, some of the journals that I've never published. And it's like, I've never published in your journal. Why would I do a review for you? Right. It's this quick. And then they ask me things that, AI is in the title, but it has nothing to do with me. And it's like, come on. So, but if it's something around things that I'm a specialist in, sometimes I will take on a review that, I'm too busy for just because I'm interested in it. Right. So,
yeah, absolutely.
All right, Carolina.
Yes.
Go ahead. You should lead us out. What topic should we have talked about today? What do you want to maybe chastise Wrecker for that he said in the past? How would you like us to proceed forward?
Or is there something you want to, say to all the other, people out there that also want to have an MISQ award?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I guess work hard.
Oh, geez.
Don't
All
give
right. You know what
up. Be a
Carolina
nice
has?
human.
Carolina has two enormous eyeballs staring at us this entire conversation behind her. And I'm not
Yes.
talking about her eyeballs. I'm talking about her wall. She's got
Oh,
like this decoration of two huge
no,
eyeballs.
she has art on her wall. Yeah.
I can take a photo of it and send it to you guys so you can post so people know.
There
No,
you go.
do that to me. I'll post it. But I might have noticed one thing, and I meant to ask you here at the closure. I don't see this IS Research Award that we sent you on this wall. I do see the eyeballs, and I see like a picture of a stadium or whatever. Where's our award? And more importantly, which of the two awards is more meaningful to you? Be honest, like the MISQ award or our earlier, like heartfelt with a very clear, rigorous process behind it. You know, not some political bullshit award.
So your award is in my office at school.
Okay,
So it's
fair enough.
hanging there by my beautiful window view of Terry's quad. When you walk into my office, actually the first thing you see is the award you guys gave me.
Thank you. That's the
See?
most appropriate answer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what
fine.
I heard is she didn't actually answer your question about which one's more important to her. So what I heard is that ours is more important, right? So I'm going to go with that.
Well, Carolina, it was a pleasure talking with you today. Absolutely. Keep on rocking, I guess. And yeah, like, you know, more what's to come, I hope, right? With or without
I
Nick as a
hope
co-author.
so. Yes. Thank you
All
for
right.
having me. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.